My name is Dr. Meera Caldwell. I'm 34 years old, a cardiology resident, and the mother of 3-year-old twins, Ava and Noah. 2 months ago, I was lying in the back of an ambulance with internal bleeding, trying not to lose consciousness while dialing the one number I never imagined would fail me, my parents. That night started like any other. I had just finished a brutal 16-hour shift at the hospital. My body was exhausted, but my mind was steady. The traffic light turned green. I eased into the intersection. I never saw the truck. It slammed into my driver's side at full speed. The sound of crushing metal still echoes in my dreams. Then darkness. When I came to, the world was sirens and flashing lights. Pain radiated through my abdomen like fire. A familiar voice hovered over me, Dr. Marcus Reed, one of the physicians I worked with. "Meera, stay with me. You're bleeding internally. We need surgery." Surgery. My twins. I checked the time, 7:12 p.m. My babysitter was scheduled to leave at 8:48 minutes. With shaking fingers and blood smeared across my screen, I called my parents. Dad answered on the 4th ring. "We're heading out. Make it quick." I swallowed hard. "I've been in an accident. I need surgery. Please, can you watch Ava and Noah tonight? Just for a few hours." Silence. Muffled voices in the background. My mother's tone, irritated. My older sister's laughter. Then the call ended. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. Family group chat. "Mom, you've always been dramatic. We have concert tickets tonight with Vanessa. We're not canceling. Figure it out. Dad, you work at a hospital. You'll be fine." Vanessa reacted with a laughing emoji. I stared at the screen. In that moment, something inside me shifted. Something permanent. Marcus noticed my expression. "What did they say?" Instead of answering, I asked for his phone. Mine was dying. Within 3 minutes, I had hired an emergency nanny service at triple the rate. I authorized payment instantly. Professionals would handle it. Strangers were more reliable than my own family. As the ambulance doors opened and I was rushed inside, I realized something deeper than pain was tearing through me. If I survived this, things would never go back to the way they were, and what I decided from that hospital bed would change my family forever. But this didn't start with the accident. It started years ago with a ranking system in my childhood home, and I was never at the top. You grew up in my house. You learned quickly that love wasn't unconditional, it was hierarchical. My older sister, Vanessa, was the headline. I was the footnote. She was 3 years older, effortlessly charismatic. The kind of person who walked into a room and bent the energy toward her. When she announced at 19 that she wanted to pursue fashion design, my mother cried tears of pride. My father called her visionary. They threw her a celebratory dinner, like she had already conquered Paris. When I said I wanted to become a doctor, my dad simply nodded. That's practical. Practical. Not inspiring. Not extraordinary. Practical. I told myself that was fine. I didn't need fireworks. I buried myself in textbooks instead. Scholarships, top grades, 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, endless nights fueled by caffeine and stubbornness. I fought for every step forward. The day I graduated medical school should have been one of the happiest days of my life. My parents arrived nearly 2 hours late. "Sorry, sweetheart," Mom said distractedly. "Vanessa had an investor meeting. We had to drop her off first." No flowers. No dinner. Just a rushed photo in the parking lot before they left again, because Vanessa needed emotional support. 3 years earlier, when Vanessa hosted her first fashion showcase, the entire family flew to New York. 5-star hotel, front row seats. My dad posted 17 photos online calling her our brilliant star. For my doctorate, a blurry parking lot picture, and a quick "congrats, honey." Still, I made excuses for them. Fashion is unstable. She needs more encouragement. Medicine is secure. I can stand on my own. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't just emotionally self-sufficient. I was financially supporting the very system that minimized me. It began 8 years ago, right after residency started. My dad called one evening, his voice tight with embarrassment. "We're in a small bind this month. Mortgage is due. Could you help? Just this once. Just this once. I wired $2,400 that night. The next month, there was another temporary issue. Then health insurance premiums, $800 monthly. Then unexpected repairs. Then business setbacks. Each request came wrapped in urgency and guilt, and I never said no because I was the practical one, the dependable one, the daughter who didn't cause drama. But over time, helping stopped feeling like support. It felt like obligation, and without realizing it, I had stepped into a role no one officially assigned me. The family silent provider. What I didn't know then was exactly how deep that financial river would run and how shocking the total would become. 3 years ago, I found out I was pregnant with twins. It should have been one of the happiest moments of my life. Instead, it marked the beginning of the loneliest chapter. Their father left when I was 5 months along, said he wasn't ready. Twins were too much responsibility. I remember standing in my kitchen after he walked out, one hand on my stomach, wondering how something so fragile could already feel so heavy. I called my parents that night, not for money, for comfort, for reassurance, for someone to tell me I wasn't about to drown. Mom's response was a sigh. Oh, Meera, this is complicated timing. Vanessa is preparing for Milan Fashion Week. She's under enormous stress. I waited for the part where she said, "But we're coming to you." It never came. When I had a bleeding scare at 28 weeks, I called again from the hospital. I was terrified. The doctors were concerned. I was alone in a sterile room, listening to machines monitor 2 tiny heartbeats. "Can you come?" I whispered into the phone. Dad cleared his throat. "We would, but your sister's showcase is tomorrow. She needs us there." I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. "Of course," I said. "I understand." But I didn't. They didn't come for the birth either. Not when Ava arrived first, crying loudly as if announcing herself to the world. Not when Noah followed minutes later, smaller but stubbornly strong. The hospital room felt too quiet afterward. Other families filled their rooms with balloons and visitors. Mine sent a text. "Congratulations. Rest when you can." And still, every month the transfers continued. $2,400 on the 1st. $800 on the 5th, 10th. Then extras, car repairs, insurance gaps, temporary cash flow issues. I tracked everything in a spreadsheet. At first, it was just organization. Then it became something else. Proof. 8 years of payments. Month after month. Over 35,000 yuan. I never asked for repayment. I never demanded gratitude. I told myself family supports each other. But looking back, I can see it clearly now. I wasn't supporting a family. I was sustaining a lifestyle. While I was surviving on 4 hours of sleep, studying for board exams with newborns and bassinets beside me, they were posting vacation photos and champagne dinners with Vanessa's investors. And the worst part? I still believed that if I just tried harder, they would finally see me. I didn't know it yet, but the accident would shatter that illusion permanently. Because when I needed them most, when my life was literally on the line, their response would expose everything. The surgery lasted 4 hours. I'm told my spleen had ruptured and the internal bleeding was severe. Another 15 minutes without treatment, and the outcome might have been very different. I don't remember being wheeled into the operating room. I remember bright lights, cold air, the anesthesiologist telling me to count backward. Then nothing. When I woke up, the pain was controlled, but the clarity wasn't. There's something about almost dying that rearranges your priorities. Lying in that hospital bed, 4 in my arm, monitors humming steadily beside me, I didn't feel fragile. I felt awake. For 5 days, I remained hospitalized. Nurses checked my vitals every few hours. Marcus stopped by daily, sometimes with coffee, sometimes just sitting quietly so I wouldn't feel alone. My parents never called. Not once. "No, are you okay? No, do you need anything? No, we're coming." The emergency nanny service sent daily photo updates instead. Ava finger painting. Noah building crooked towers. Strangers making sure my children felt safe. Strangers showed up. Family didn't. On the third day, I asked the nurse to bring me my laptop. "You should be resting," she said gently. "I am," I replied, "but I need to finish something." When the screen lit up, my banking dashboard greeted me like it always did. Automatic transfers scheduled like clockwork. 8 years of quiet loyalty. I clicked into recurring payments. Mortgage assistance. Cancel. Insurance premiums. Cancel. Supplemental transfers. Cancel. Every last one. The silence afterward felt loud. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just final. Next, I opened my contacts. Dad, blocked. Mom, blocked. Vanessa, blocked. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. It felt like setting down a weight I'd been carrying for so long. I forgot what it felt like to stand upright. Later that afternoon, Marcus sat beside my bed. "You look different," he said carefully. "I am," I answered. For the first time in nearly a decade, I wasn't financing my own neglect. I knew they would notice soon. The missing money would speak louder than any confrontation. They would call, demand explanations, accuse me of overreacting. But I underestimated one thing. They didn't plan to apologize. They planned to control the narrative. 2 weeks after I was discharged, still healing, still moving carefully, there was a knock on my front door. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks. I looked through the peephole and froze, because standing on my doorstep was someone I hadn't seen in years, and his arrival would change the direction of this story completely. When I opened the door, I wasn't prepared for the rush of emotion that hit me. Standing there, tall despite his age, silver hair neatly combed back, was my grandfather, Judge Harold Whitaker. I hadn't seen him in nearly 3 years, not because I didn't want to, because somehow visits had always been complicated. Too far, too busy, bad timing. Excuses that now felt intentional. He stepped forward and pulled me into a careful but firm hug. I winced slightly. My incision was still healing, but I didn't let go. "Let me look at you," he said, holding my shoulders and studying my face like he was reading a case file. His blue eyes, sharp, observant, softened. "I know what happened." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "Eleanor called me the night of your accident." Aunt Eleanor, my mother's younger sister, the only one who ever asked questions when things didn't add up. Grandpa stepped inside. Ava and Noah immediately gravitated toward him, curious and fearless. Within minutes, he was crouched on the floor, letting them inspect his watch. He watched them for a long moment before speaking again. "They're bright," he said quietly, "just like you were." We sat at the kitchen table while the twins played nearby. "I've seen this pattern for years," he continued. "The imbalance, the favoritism, the expectations placed on you." I stared at my coffee. Maybe I was just imagining it. He gave a small, firm shake of his head. "I spent 40 years on the federal bench. Meera, I built a career separating truth from performance. You were not imagining it." His voice wasn't angry. It was precise. "Do you still have records of the money you've given them?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Every transfer." "Good." He leaned back in his chair. "My 70th birthday is next Saturday. The entire family will be there." I felt something shift in the air. "I want you to bring those records." My pulse quickened. "Why?" "Because I'm done watching silence protect the wrong people." I swallowed. "I don't want to destroy the family." "You won't," he said calmly. "You'll simply introduce the truth." The word truth felt heavier than revenge. Cleaner. Stronger. "They've already started talking," he added. "Your mother called 3. Relatives saying you've been unstable since the accident." Course they had. Control the story before it controls you. I looked at my grandfather, really looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone. "I'll bring the records," I said. He nodded once. "And Meera?" "Yes?" When facts enter a room, performances tend to collapse. After he left, I stood in the kitchen holding the edge of the counter. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about reputation, narrative, legacy. And if they were preparing to paint me as unstable, Then next Saturday would not go the way they expected. My grandfather's estate looked exactly like it belonged in a legacy. Magazine spread, white columns, polished stone walkway, manicured hedges trimmed with surgical precision. 40, maybe 50 cars lined the circular drive. The entire family had shown up. I sat in my parked car for a moment longer than necessary, hands resting on the steering wheel. Ava and Noah were in the back seat, excited about the balloons they could see through the tall windows. They had no idea they were walking into a battlefield disguised as a birthday party. I wore a simple navy dress, no statement jewelry, no dramatic entrance. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there with documentation. Inside, the party buzzed with polished laughter. Crystal glasses clinked. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Everything looked elegant, controlled, until my parents saw me. My mother's smile froze mid-laugh. My father's posture stiffened instantly. Vanessa approached first. Of course she did. She wore a sleek designer gown that probably cost more than my monthly childcare bill. Her expression was flawless, warm but distant. "Meera," she said lightly, air kissing near my cheek. "You look recovered." We were so worried. I met her eyes steadily. I nearly died. Her smile flickered just slightly. "Mom said it wasn't that serious," she replied. "Mom wasn't there." Silence. Then she recovered smoothly. "Well, you're fine now. That's what matters." She drifted back into the crowd. But I could feel it, the tension spreading like cracks under glass. 30 minutes into the party, I was pouring fruit punch for the twins when I heard Vanessa's voice rise, intentionally louder. "I'm honestly concerned about her," she said to a small cluster of relatives. The accident really affected her emotionally. My mother joined in, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. "She cut us off completely," she said shakily. "Blocked our numbers. We've been devastated." I kept my back turned, but every word landed. "She's been saying strange things," Vanessa continued, accusing us of abandoning her. "It's just not like her. I think the stress of being a single mom is overwhelming." There it was. Unstable, emotional, dramatic. The groundwork had already been laid. A few sympathetic glances floated my way. A distant cousin approached carefully. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "Your parents seem very worried." I opened my mouth, but before I could respond, a glass clinked sharply across the room. The string quartet fell silent. My grandfather stood slowly from his chair, whiskey glass in hand, posture straight as ever. The room quieted instantly. "Before we continue celebrating," he said calmly, his voice carrying effortlessly, "there are a few matters I'd like addressed." My father stepped forward quickly. "Dad, maybe now isn't the time." Grandpa raised a single hand, and the room froze. Because when a former federal judge signals he's about to speak, people listen. The air felt different once my grandfather stood. Not louder, heavier. "Before I continue," he said calmly, "Richard, you seemed eager to say something." My father straightened immediately, stepping forward with practiced composure. "Yes, Dad. I just think the family should understand that Meera has been under immense stress lately." There it was again. Stress. Instability. Fragility. He turned to the room, his voice smooth and controlled. "After her accident, she's been distant, accusatory. She's cut off contact with us entirely. We're deeply concerned." My mother stepped beside him, pressing a hand dramatically against her chest. "We've only ever supported her, loved her, but she's been saying things that simply aren't true." Vanessa nodded from across the room, arms folded carefully. "She even claims we refused to help during her accident. That's not what happened." A murmur passed through the crowd. Sympathy was shifting toward them. I felt Ava tighten her grip on my dress. Noah leaned against my leg, sensing the tension without understanding it. My grandfather let the silence stretch. Then he spoke, not loudly, but with authority that silenced the room instantly. "I spent 4 decades in courtrooms," he began, "and I learned something important. When someone tries very hard to establish a narrative before evidence is presented, it usually means evidence is coming. The room went still. My father's jaw tightened. Grandpa turned toward me. Meera, would you join me? My heart pounded, but my steps were steady. I handed him the manila folder. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he addressed the room. For 8 years, my granddaughter has been financially supporting her parents. A sharp inhale from somewhere behind us. My mother laughed softly, too quickly. That's ridiculous. Grandpa opened the folder. These are bank records, documented transfers, monthly payments. He began reading. Mortgage assistance, $2,400 per month. Insurance premiums, $800 per month. Additional discretionary transfers, variable. He looked up. Total over 8 years? Approximately $368,000. The number landed like a physical object. Silence. Not polite silence. Shock. Vanessa's face drained of color. That can't be right, she said sharply. Grandpa calmly held up printed statements. Every transfer dated, every amount verified. He turned to my father. Richard, would you like to explain why your daughter has been funding your household for nearly a decade? My father's confident posture cracked for the first time. That was family support, he said weakly. Grandpa's eyes hardened. Family support typically flows both directions. A ripple of uncomfortable whispers spread through the guests. My mother tried again. She offered to help. I finally spoke. I offered once. You made it permanent. The words felt steady, clean, not emotional, just true. And truth doesn't need volume. But my grandfather wasn't finished. My father's face shifted, fear flashing briefly, because he knew. And whatever came next would not be recoverable. He closed the folder slowly. And there is one more matter, he said. The room felt suspended in time. No music, no glasses clinking, just silence, thick enough to hear breathing. My grandfather kept one hand resting on the folder. There's one final detail, he said calmly. And it concerns me. My father stiffened. Dad, this isn't necessary. Oh, I believe it is. Grandpa turned slowly, making eye contact with several relatives before continuing. 3 years ago, I began restructuring my estate. At the time, I intended to divide everything evenly between my children, Helen, Richard, and Eleanor. My mother's face brightened slightly, misreading where this was going. But, he continued, after observing certain behaviors, patterns of exploitation, manipulation, and entitlement, I revised those documents. The air shifted again. I removed Richard and Helen as primary beneficiaries. A collective gasp rippled through the room. My father stepped forward. You can't be serious. I am. Vanessa's composure finally fractured. This is 'cause of her? She demanded, pointing at me. No, Grandpa said firmly. This is because of choices. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. I reassigned the majority of my estate into a trust. He paused. For Ava and Noah, the silence that followed wasn't shock. It was impact. My mother actually staggered back a step. You're punishing us over a misunderstanding? She whispered. Grandpa's voice sharpened for the first time that evening. No, I am correcting an imbalance. He turned toward the guests again. For years, Meera carried financial responsibilities that were never hers. She did so quietly, without complaint, while being publicly minimized. He closed the folder gently. I will not reward that behavior. I will not finance disrespect. My father's face had lost all color. This is manipulation, he muttered. Grandpa met his eyes steadily. No, this is a consequence. And there it was, the word that had been missing for 8 years. Consequence. No shouting followed. No dramatic collapse. Just something quieter, more permanent. Reputation shifted. Perception changed. People were looking at my parents differently now. Not with sympathy, with calculation. The party ended early. Guests left in hushed clusters. Vanessa walked out without saying goodbye. My mother avoided eye contact. My father didn't look at me at all. But my grandfather did. He placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to fight anymore," he said quietly. "Your silence was never weakness. It was grace. But grace doesn't mean surrender." As I drove home that night, Ava asleep in her car seat and Noah softly snoring beside her, I felt something unfamiliar. Not revenge. Not victory. Peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't competing for validation. I wasn't financing approval. I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I had chosen myself. And sometimes, that's the only inheritance that truly matters. If you've ever been labeled difficult for setting boundaries, if you've ever funded your own disrespect, if you've ever been the quiet one who finally decided to speak, this was your reminder. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand. And when it does, everything rearranges.